Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then my name is Nicole and I struggled for a long time to get pregnant naturally with very irregular and long cycles. I was able to get pregnant twice on my own. Unfortunately, one of those pregnancies did end in a miscarriage. And then I got pregnant using a medication called Clomid, and I have been sharing that whole journey here on YouTube with you guys. And if you're interested in watching those videos, I will have a playlist linked at the end of this video. But today we are talking all about tips for trying to conceive when you have long and irregular cycles. I'm not promising that doing any of these things will for sure get you pregnant, but I know when I was trying to conceive naturally, it was really hard for me to find other women who had cycles that were similar to mine. A lot of the videos I was finding on YouTube, people had regular cycles, and I just felt like I couldn't relate as much. I think it's really important that I state before getting into these tips that if you have very long and heavy painful periods or even cycles that are longer than 35 days in length, or they vary more than 7 days from one cycle to the next cycle, personally, I think it is really important for you to reach out to your doctor, some type of medical provider, and just explain to them what is going on, because it might not be as simple of just trying a few different tips to get pregnant. A lot of these symptoms can lead to very serious things that you might need medical attention for. With that being said, I understand too that there are a lot of people like me who just want to try everything they can on their own to get pregnant without any type of medical intervention. Now let's talk about these tips. The first tip I'm going to share is probably the most important tip I can give anybody trying to conceive, especially those people who cannot pinpoint when they might ovulate. And that tip is to baby dance a lot. And by a lot, I mean I would baby dance the day your period ends and keep baby dancing every other day your whole cycle. If you're baby dancing every other day your whole cycle, you are guaranteed to either hit the day before you ovulate, the day you do ovulate. So there's a very good chance, if you have very inconsistent or very long cycles, that you might not be ovulating at all your whole cycle. And it may just take catching that egg, that one cycle that you do ovulate, to help you get pregnant. Now, for most people, if you ovulate every month, then doing this 1 month could be what gets you pregnant if you have a good healthy egg that month. But for people like me who their cycles are really irregular, and my doctor actually diagnosed me with anovulation, meaning that I do not ovulate every cycle. Most likely I don't ovulate at all, but I did ovulate because I was able to get pregnant. It's just a lot harder when you go multiple cycles without ovulating. So doing this tip about baby dancing every other day your whole cycle is going to guarantee you that there will be sperm ready for whenever that egg is released. Now, sperm can live a very long time inside of you under perfect conditions. Depending on your situation with you and your spouse, it could be a very different situation compared to another person. So doing this tip is going to get you the best results. I know it can be hard for some people to hear, because some people are like, that's ridiculous, I'm not doing that all cycle long. But that is my number one tip. My next tip is about ovulation test. Now, if you're planning on just doing the every other day your whole cycle, then you could decide, I don't want to do ovulation tests. I'm just going to baby dance as much as possible and hope that we catch it. Now, the benefit of taking the ovulation tests is you can try to see if you do ovulate, or if you're like me, sometimes it would look like my body is getting ready to ovulate and then it would not happen. Now, if you're taking ovulation tests and you have irregular cycles, I really recommend that you buy the cheapy, like go on Amazon, get a big box, like 50 or 100, get a lot of ovulation tests for really, really cheap, and take them 3 times a day. In the morning, hold your urine for as long as you can after your morning test, and try to get it between 10 and 1 o'clock for your second test, and then take one before you or go to bed at night. Okay, take it 3 times a day at the very beginning, so you can kind of figure out when your body is starting to peak ovulation, and then also figure out even if you're getting any kind of fluctuation in your LH tests. This is going to help you tremendously, because if you can see that your test line is getting darker, but then it's never getting as dark as the control line, and then it starts to go down again, and then it starts to get darker, and then it doesn't quite get as dark as the control line, that's telling you that your body is trying to ovulate, but it's not getting high enough to actually ovulate, especially if you're experiencing that multiple times in a cycle. If you see it one time in a cycle and then your period starts, it might just tell you, okay, you didn't test enough, so you didn't catch that peak test. So if you're starting to get darker lines, you can test more than 1 time a day, or more than that 3 times a day. Just make sure you're holding your urine and having a very concentrated test sample. I would completely stay away from those digital tests, because in my experience, I would get flashing smiley faces, or I would even get like a peak on a digital test. In my little cheap test, the easy at home test I would buy, would never get to an actual peak. And then those digital tests would no longer be good because it takes so much time for them to reset. And I would keep testing with the cheap test, and it would show the lines getting lighter and lighter and lighter, and then all of a sudden they would get darker and darker again. So I just think that those digital tests can be super confusing if you don't have regular cycles. Another important thing to remember when you get a positive ovulation test, it does not 100% mean that you will for sure ovulate the next day. So if you're doing the every other day thing and then you get a positive ovulation test and you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna baby dance tonight and then we're good. Please don't do that, because it takes a person's body a little while to read the luteinizing hormone, which is the hormone the LH test looks for, in your urine. So it's not going to be the same exact time that your brain is now indicating to your urine, okay, you have a peak LH. Also with that, it takes your body time from when you have a peak LH in your body to now release an egg. And there are varying time frames from when you might start to peak to when you actually ovulate. And you might think, okay, well, I already ovulated, so we're good, when your body might not have ovulated. And depending on the conditions in your cervix, it might be better to keep trying, keep baby dancing, so you have good fresh sperm in there when the egg is released. I know that's a lot of information. Hopefully that makes sense, but please take away from this, don't just stop baby dancing because you got your peak ovulation test. And please do not wait to start baby dancing until you get your peak ovulation test, because waiting to get a test that's positive can be too late sometimes. And on the other side of that, stopping as soon as you get an a peak ovulation test can also be too early. You want to make sure you're doing it before and you're doing it after you have that positive ovulation test. And that's why baby dancing every other day can be very, very helpful. My next tip is about apps. Now, you don't have to use an app to track these things, but I definitely think an app can be a good, helpful place to keep all of this information. If you don't want to use an app, I would definitely get some type of calendar that you can keep all this information on. The things that are really important to pay attention to when it comes to tracking is the length of your period and then the length of your cycle. And just in case you don't know, your period length is the time from when you start bleeding until when your bleeding stops. And your cycle length is from the day you start bleeding until the day before you start to bleed again. Okay, so your cycle is the whole length, and then your period is just the part that you are bleeding. Just in case you weren't aware, some people get confused when I say I have really long cycles, like 90 days. They're like, oh my God, you bled for 90 days? No, that's a period, not your cycle. And keep track of this for as long as you are TTCing, because if you do end up going to a doctor or fertility specialist, they are going to want to know the lengths of your period, the lengths of your cycle, and having all that information can make your experience with the fertility doctor go a lot smoother. But it also can help you see how long your cycles are to figure out if there is a fertility window that you can kind of keep an eye out for, or if there is something that might be a major concern to you. Also, these apps can be a great place to track your OPKs. A lot of them have a place where they can actually take a picture of your ovulation tests, and you can keep that picture in your app and compare it every day or every multiple times a day that you are taking these tests, because it's really important to compare tests that are still valid, and that means within the window to read the test. So different tests are going to have different lengths of when you can read them. Most of them by 10 minutes you no longer want to read the tests anymore. So taking that photo and then being able to compare that photo to the previous test or the next test is really important. That's another big reason why I love these apps. I love the Pre-Mom app because it does such a good job with these ovulation tests. So if you don't know what app that you might want to use, I would check out that Pre-Mom app. The next few things I'm going to talk about are pretty TMI. So if you don't want to listen to TMI stuff, then you can just end the video now. But these are some other things that can help you figure out if you could be getting close to ovulation. The first thing is tracking your cervical mucus. So your cervical mucus is going to change throughout your cycle, and I will insert a photo somewhere over here kind of making it easier to understand, because it can be really difficult when you're looking at your own cervical mucus to kind of figure out what you're seeing. But you can either look at your underwear if you have cervical mucus on your underwear, or if you want to wash your hands and put your fingers inside yourself and pull out cervical mucus to look at that way. I know it sounds like it might be weird, but your cervical mucus can definitely be an indicator that ovulation is getting near. And you can track this in your apps. A lot of the apps have like literally a place for cervical mucus and what it looks like, and it can kind of help you also with descriptive words. But this photo will show you what your cervical mucus might look like as you go through stages. And what you want to see is what people call egg white cervical mucus. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It looks like the egg whites that you would see when you crack an egg, and you want it to be super stretchy and very clear. Now, not everybody is going to get this type of cervical mucus when they are getting close to ovulation. So tracking it from cycle to cycle to cycle will help you figure out if this is a good indicator for you or if it's not. Another kind of weird thing that's TMI that you might want to keep an eye out for is checking your cervical position. And that does require for you to put your fingers inside of you to feel for your cervix. So if that's not something you're comfortable with, then by all means don't do it. And if you're planning on doing it, just make sure you are washing your hands and your nails are not really long or something, because you don't want to damage yourself by any means. But you want to have a cervix that is high and open and soft. This is telling you that you are getting closer to ovulation. And then when your cervix is low, closed, and firmer, like harder, then it means you're probably further away from ovulation. But be aware that cervical position can change with different things that happen throughout the day. And it's really important, if you're going to check your cervical position, you do it at the same time every day and not before or after baby dancing. So that can interfere with the way that your cervix is. So just avoid doing that during those times. I hope you guys find these tips helpful, and if you have a very irregular or long cycles, please leave me a comment below and tell me what your cycles are like or what your experience has been like trying to conceive, because I would love to connect with some more people who have struggled with long irregular cycles. Like, I have cycles anywhere from 70 to 90 days long, which just blows my mind sometimes. And I would love to meet some other people and kind of discuss what their cycles are like too. Thank you for making it to the end of my video, and I can't wait to have our conversation down below in the comments. I'll see you guys there.